Good morning, everyone. Though nobody has joined yet I intend to start the space because this is a book reading that I am reading the life of Swami Vivekananda, as you can see in the picture of the tweet. Um, and I just to go ahead and read it. Whoever joins are welcome, and we can have a discussion on the number of pages we read today. The first chapter of from the book The Life of Swami Vivekananda by his Eastern and Western disciple. The first chapter is named as Ancestry. I hope I am audible, though there is no one yet to confirm if I am audible or not. Coming from afar are the voices of the silence. Rarely are they heard, save my mystics and sages. And when one of these voices become embodied as sound audible to mortal hearing, blessed is the time and blessed are those who hear. Formless is the spirit and subjective is the vision thereof. Dense is the illusion that hangs as the cosmic veil before reality. How divine, therefore, must be the personality that makes objective the vision of the spirit. How priceless the history of one who has lifted even a fringe of the veil. The illusion becomes transparent in the effulgence of such a spiritual personality. Verily, the spirit itself becomes revealed, and those who see are brought face to face with reality. To introduce the life of Swami Vivekananda is to introduce the subject of spiritual life itself. All the intellectual struggle, all the doubts, all the burning faith, all the unending process of spiritual illumination were revealed in him. As a man and as a Vedantist, he manifested the manliness that is sanctity and the sanctity that is manliness. He manifested the patriotism that proceeds from the vision of the Dharma and the universality that comes when God is seen in everything. And through the true of divine wisdom, he lived a life of both intense activity and supreme realization. Indeed, his life revealed throughout the glory of the supersensuous life. To the task of writing his life, we fervently set ourselves conscious of unworthiness. For who can know the inner self of even the least of men, much less that of a Swami Vivekananda? And who can sound the depths of his realization? The task is, in a way, beyond us. Yet the world must know the greatness of the life that has thrilled it through its Eastern heart and Western mind. The family of Shimla or Shimulia, a northern district in Calcutta, was rich and powerful, renowned for many generations for its city, learning, and strong independent spirit. Ram Mohan Datta, the great-grandfather of the subject of this chronicle, was the managing clerk and associate of an English solicitor. He amassed a great fortune in the exercise of his profession and lived happily, surrounded by a large family in a mansion in Gourmohan Mukherjee Lane. The house is still standing, but because of the subsequent strange circumstances of the family, that part of it which had once been used as a temple has passed into the hands of strangers. The doorway that fronts on the street is massive. The covered hall, with a room on one side and sitting space on the other, leads to a second doorway, beyond which are the courtyard and the living quarters. To the right are the rooms for the male members of the family. Across the courtyard and facing the doorway rises the women's quarter. 2 stories high, the lower floor containing the kitchens, the upper the living apartments. From the latticed enclosure, the Parda ladies in the olden days could look onto the courtyard when religious ceremonies on special occasions were being performed to the beating of drums and the blowing of conchs. Ram Mohan Datta left 2 sons, Durga Prasad and Kali Prasad. Durga Prasad was a gifted youth, well versed in Persian and Sanskrit, and so skilled in law that his father made him a partner in his legal profession. But he had such a strong leaning towards monastic life that after the birth of a son in 1835, he renounced the world, becoming a monk at the age of 25, and was not heard of by any member of the family until the 12 years of spiritual practices prescribed by monastic rule had been completed. In the meantime, his son Vishwanath, who had been left as an infant with his mother, required bringing up. The mother Shamashundari was fearless, devout, and worthy in every way of accepting the great responsibility that had fallen upon her. When Vishwanath was 3 years old, she took him on a pilgrimage to the holy city of Varanasi. As there was no railway in those days, the entire party set out by boat on the 500-mile trip. What a thrilling adventure that excursion was. Combination of hardships and romance. New cities, new scenes, new customs, new peoples, even new languages were encountered as the boat with its precious freight glided on. One morning, as Vishwanath was playing about on the deck, he fell into the Ganga. Without a second's hesitation, Shamashundari, though she could not swim, jumped overboard fully clothed to save him. Fortunately, she was in time and held her tiny son up by the hand until they were both hauled aboard. So tight was her grip on him that he bore the marks of it for many years. At last Varanasi was reached. Delighted with the holy atmosphere of the place, Shamashundari visited all the temples, including that of Vireshwar Shiva. One day after she had bathed and was on her way to the temple of Vishwanath, she slipped and fell with enough force to make her lose consciousness. A passing monk came to her assistance, picked her up, and laid her on the temple steps. When she opened her eyes, what was her amazement to find that the monk was her husband. Instantly, both were overwhelmed with a tremendous emotion, but worldly attachments were not for them. She, as well as he, had renounced. In a moment he disappeared, murmuring, "Oh, Maya," and she continued her pious round. An interesting story is told of Durga Prasad's return to his birthplace. One that reveals the essential strength and quality of the man. Quite unostentatiously, he made his way into Calcutta and instead of going to his former home, put up at the house of an old friend, begging him not to let anyone know of his return. But the friend was unable to contain the joyous news and informed Durga Prasad's relatives, who at once came and forcibly took him away with them. The monk, without a word, seated himself in a corner of the room provided for him, the door of which had been locked so that he might not escape. For 3 days he stayed there without giving any sign or tasting a bite of food. The relatives, fearing that he might die, finally opened the door. Later the monk disappeared, and except for a rumor that he had become the head of a monastery in Varanasi, was never again heard of by the Datta family. When Vishwanath had come of age and was earning his own livelihood, he once went to Varanasi in search of his father, but could not trace him. Account for the exceptional genius of Swami Vivekananda, one must not lose sight of the impressive figure of his grandfather, the man who deemed the world well lost in his search for God. Vivekananda's pronounced tendency towards the monastic life was in his blood. As we say, to explain those inexplicable outcroppings of family traits and tendencies that are at times so remarkable that, in order to satisfy ourselves, must accept either the reincarnation or that of heredity. After his father had renounced the world, Vishwanath's uncle, Kali Prasad, became the head of the family. Since he had no income of his own, the Dattas' accumulated wealth had to be spent to maintain the large joint family. Thus, they gradually became poorer and poorer. Nor was Kali Prasad a generous hearted person, which would explain why Vishwanath's courageous mother had to bring up her son in considerable difficulty, though legally he was the inheritor of the family property. To add to his misfortune, when Vishwanath was 10 years old, his mother passed away. Thenceforth, the orphaned boy received at the hands of his uncle the kind of treatment that orphans generally receive in this world. Yet, all through his life, Vishwanath reverenced and generously helped the uncle, though he was well aware that he had to by him at every step. As Vishwanath grew to manhood, he became the pride of the Duttas, who, in high hopes and expectation, looked to him to carry on the family tradition of learning. Nor were they disappointed. He became proficient in Bengali, English, Persian, Arabic, Urdu, and Hindi. He also studied Sanskrit in Atol, a traditional Sanskrit school. History was his forte, but in addition, he acquired a fairly good knowledge of astrology and later on was himself able to cast the horoscopes of some of his children. He was also a great lover of music. Like his father, Durga Prasad, he had a sweet voice, and at one time he took lessons in singing from an ustad, a music expert. There was a time when every Saturday and Sunday he used to hold a musical soiree and entertain his guests with a pillow feast. After passing the final examination at Gormohan Adhya's school, which afterwards came to be called the Oriental Seminary, Vishwanath had tried his hand at business, but was not successful. He then began apprenticeship under a British attorney, Mr. Temple, by name. He passed the attorneyship examination in 1866 and set up practice in partnership with Ashutosh Dhar under the farm name of Dhar and Datta. After some time, he settled in the legal profession independently and was enrolled as an attorney at law in the High Court of Calcutta. As an attorney, Vishwanath made a considerable reputation, and his field of work spread over the whole of northern India. His practice took him to such distant places as Lucknow, Lahore, Delhi, Rajputana, Bilaspur, Raipur, and so on. In those days, journeys were not simple, for the railway line extended only up to Mughal Sarai, from where one had to travel to further distant places by other means. While in Lahore, he performed the worship of the Divine Mother Durga in a portrait and entertained many people with the consecrated food. On the one hand, Vishwanath earned a great deal of money through his professional work of attorney. On the other hand, he spent money liberally. Surrounded by friends and relatives, attended by many servants, owning carriages and horses, he enjoyed living in an affluent style. He was a connoisseur of good cooking and was himself expert in the art, preparing various kinds of dishes for his friends and relatives. He was he was of the opinion that growing children needed to be well fed. otherwise their brains would not develop properly. Thus, he spared no expense in providing good and nourishing food for his children. He thought it was not necessary to leave behind an enormous patrimony, for if money were spent in giving his sons a taste for a high standard of living, a good education, and healthy bodies, in due course they would be compelled to make suitable arrangements for themselves, and would be able to do so. But if, on the other hand, they were to inherit much wealth, they would remain indolent and would squander all the money. We may well imagine the experience of his own rise to affluence, together with his observation of the do nothing members of the joint family, gave him this philosophy of life. He had observed his uncle Kali Prasad, son of an affluent father, engaged in spending the inherited wealth while earning nothing, whereas he himself, a poor orphan, had become wealthy through his own manly efforts. Aside from his intellectual attainments, Vishwanath was endowed with many good qualities that endeared him to all. In whatever situation he might have been, he never lost the nobility of his nature. He was independent in spirit, generous in disposition, devoted to his friends, a protector of the needy. His keen understanding of his fellow men resulted in deep compassion and extensive charity. At the sight of anyone in distress, he would himself feel afflicted and would help him unstintingly. Many students who were distant relatives used to stay at his house and receive a good education at his expense, all of them becoming successful in life. Nor would any neighbor who sought his help ever go away disappointed. Little wonder then that the people of the locality used to call him Datta Bishwanath, charitable Data Bishwanath, sorry, Data Bishwanath, which means charitable Vishwanath. One of his sons later wrote of him, extending charity to the poor and the distressed was like a disease with him. Vishnu used to say, there is no need to worry about my sons. They will themselves they will themselves make their own living. But these poor people have not that strength. That is why it is necessary to help them. Indeed, Vishwanath spent his ample means without thought of the morrow, giving to all who asked, and here it was that he showed a lack of discretion, for he maintained some of his relatives' idleness, even in drunkenness. Criticized at one time by his eldest son Naren for bestowing charity upon such worthless persons, Vishwanath replied, how can you understand the great misery of human life? When you realize when you realize it, you will sympathize with the poor creatures who try to forget their sorrows in the momentary oblivion obtained through intoxicants. Although Vishwanath's behavior with people was warm-hearted and sweet, his temperament was basically grave. He would meet contrary or illogical arguments with reasoned answers. His outlook was broad and his knowledge was vast. Being a liberal Hindu with a receptive mind, he desired to know the essential and universal teachings of religions, and thus he carefully studied the Bible and the Diwan-e Hafiz. But though liberal-minded by temperament, Vishwanath was averse to indiscriminately rushing into newly started movements. He was nevertheless progressive in his views. In 1882 he wrote in both Bengali and Hindi a book entitled Shishtachar Paddhati, which means Canons of Good Conduct, in two parts, in which he stated that during his travels in northern and central India he had noticed that there persisted a lot of social superstitions harmful to the people. Owing to Vishwanath's premature death, the second part of the book was not published. This was the second of two known books written by Vishwanath. The first was his Bengali novel Shulochana, published in 1880 in the name of his uncle Gopal Chandra Datta. Vishwanath also defended the remarriage of girl widows as championed by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. When a strong agitation centering on two such marriages raged in the neighborhood, Vishwanath and his wife supported the remarriages. In fine, though Vishwanath was like other Hindus in manners and conduct, his Catholic outlook, born of his liberal education and acquired culture, saved him from a narrow orthodoxy. This was a transitional period of India's history. The new civilization that had grown through the intermingling, sorry about that, the intermingling of Hindu and Islamic culture still prevalent, but European culture had also entered the stream of Indian life. The educated Indians of the time naturally came under these three influences. Vishwanath was no exception. His profession brought him into intimate contact with high ranking Muslim families in northern India, many of whom were his clients. As a result, he used to follow in dress and deportment, eating and drinking manners and etiquette, traditional Hindu Islamic ways. He also had many friends among the Europeans and in some matters of daily life would follow the British, as was the vogue among the elites. Hence, his conduct was marked by Hindu Islamic culture on the one hand and European culture on the other. Both Brahmins and Muslim fakirs used to receive alms as well as sympathy from him. The Dattas were Shaktas by faith, and Vishwanath, though so liberal in outlook, did not make any change in the traditional ways of the family with regard to the practice of religion. Vishwanath was blessed with a wife who was his peer in every respect. At the age of 16, he had been married to Bhuvaneshwari Devi, the only child of Nandalal Bosu of the renowned Bosu family of Shimla, Kolkata. Bhuvaneshwari, born in 1841, was only 10 years old at the time of her marriage. Being the only child of her parents, she inherited the paternal property, which afterwards accrued to her children. As she grew older, she became expert in the management of household affairs and cheerfully shouldered the responsibility of her husband's large family. She was exceptionally intelligent and found time, even in the midst of her many chores, for sewing, music, and the daily study of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Graceful, devoted, and full of the fire of one born to regal estate, she commanded the respect and veneration of all who came in contact with her, and her judgment was followed in all matters of importance. Above all, Bhuvaneshwari Devi was deeply religious in temperament and used daily to perform the worship of Shiva. She was not given to much talking. Calm resignation to the will of God in all circumstances, power and reserve characterized this noble Hindu woman. The poor and the helpless were the special objects of her solicitude. Like Vishwanath, Bhuvaneshwari Devi had a very sweet voice and could beautify of Sri Krishna as heard in religious dramas. When beggars singing religious songs came to the house to beg, she could learn their songs by listening only once. She was indeed noted for her unusual memory and knew by heart long passages from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. More important, she had absorbed the essence of these timeless epics, and that essence, together with the culture to which it was the key, she passed on to her children as their great heritage. It was then to these two, Vishwanath and Bhuvaneshwari Devi, that the boy who was to become the greatest man of his age, whose influence was to shake the world, and who was to lay the foundation of a new order of things, was born. This brings us to the end of the first chapter. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm just planning to read one chapter a day, inviting every one of you to speak if you have anything to share or suggest or say anything. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining once again. I hope you received the invitation. Thank you. No one willing to speak, or you are not able to see the mic? Hello, Pooja. Hi,
Yeah,
Bridget.
yeah. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to ask you, do you follow this every day or it's just for the weekend?
I have started it today.
Okay,
I wait both the books. There are two volumes on the life of Swami Vivekananda. So there are two big volumes.
okay.
I won't be able to finish if I just doing on the weekends. I think I will have to do it every day.
So, how much time means period will take? At least 1 month, 2 months, 3 months?
Oh, let me check the number of pages. Just a minute. Um, Given again, number of pages cannot also decide that, because if I go by chapter, one chapter a day,
Okay.
there are around 500, 558 pages in volume 1. Okay.
So,
And
how many
chapters
volume in
are
totality?
two
Okay,
volumes, and one volume having 558 pages.
okay. And one chapter will
And
approx like
there are,
1 page or 2 pages, right?
no, this particular one, let me tell you the number of chapters
Sure.
first. Number of chapters is 15 chapters.
15. Okay, okay. It's
15.
lengthy. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. And total number of pages in this first chapter were 9 pages.
okay, okay. Nice. But sure,
So it took me around 25 minutes to read 9 pages.
sure. Please do it on
Yeah.
everyday basis. Okay, daily basis.
Yes, Bridget. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Harit and Bhairav. Would love to hear something from you. Uh, Not able to see the mic. Sanjeevni, Yukta, thank you for joining.
And one more thing, Sonali,
Yeah, Bridget.
can you, if after this, if just I wanted to know more about Netaji also, so we can go
Okay.
there also. Okay,
Okay, I'll
I'm
try to.
admirer
For
of both of them, Netaji and Swamiji. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
For this series, the plan is basically to read the life of Swami Vivekananda first, and then go for reading the life of Ma Sarda Devi. I don't know if you know about her.
No, I don't know.
And
I have not heard it.
okay, and then the life of Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans. So,
Yeah, that I know. Yeah, for sure.
so yeah, so Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans was the guru of Swami Vivekananda,
Yeah, I know that.
and Sri Ma Sarada Devi was the wife of Krishna Paramhans.
Okay, okay.
So the sequence in Ramakrishna mission, the sequence of reading is suggested from Ramakrishna mission is that you should read the life of Swami Vivekananda first, then the life of Ma Sarada Devi, and then the life of
Has she played any
Sri
part or
Ramakrishna.
any contribution? Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's a huge one.
Okay. So I'll be
It's a huge one, but
sure.
people know very little about her. So
Yeah, I not heard of that, so I'm asking.
yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
Uh, yeah. Okay, Sanjeevani, if you want to share anything, or you just joined now, I don't think. you heard anything that I read today. We read the first chapter of the Life of Swami Vivekananda, that is the Ancestry. We were talking about, we got to know about how great a life was led by Swami Vivekananda's father mainly, and of course about his grandfather and everyone, uncle and everyone as well. So I have invited you to speak. If you want to say something, you can please take the mic and speak. Bhairav, I don't think you're willing to speak at this moment. Just drop me a message whenever you are free or you want to say something, suggest something, add something. So, yes, I think we can wind up if nothing else.
Sonali, I have to leave for the office. So I'll take a leave. Okay.
Sure, Vijay. I'm also going to end the space now.
Okay. Tomorrow I'll join. Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thank you very much for joining.